Let's create some monsters. Hey guys, I'm Marilyn and welcome back to my channel. So as you can see from the title, today we're going to be talking about writing monsters and creatures. So this video is for all my fellow speculative fiction authors out there. But before we dive into that, remember that I do offer editing and proofreading services. Link is in the description box below. And if you want to check out a fantasy action adventure novel for adults, have a look at my debut novel, To Wear a Crown. The universal book link is in the description box below. Now, without further ado, let's dive into my 5 tips for writing monsters and creatures. Tip number 1, origins and lore. If you think about the legends of monsters, the mythological creatures that we know of in the real world, they all come from a certain culture, a certain story, a origin myth, and usually rich lore that has developed over time. So it'll make your creatures and monsters much more realistic if you think about their lore and origin. A rich backstory and mythology for your monsters and creatures is important. Consider their origins, how they came into existence, any cultural or historical significance they may have, how they first came into contact with human beings or whatever the main characters in your story are. And what's great about this is you can really draw on real world myths and lore because there are so many rich resources out there. Tip number 2, distinct characteristics. Give your monsters and creatures distinct physical and or behavioral traits. Think about their appearance, their size, the color of their skin, the texture of their skin, any unusual features they have that set them apart. Think about their behavior, their habits, their instincts. And this should also reflect their nature. So are they predators? Are they curious beings? Are they misunderstood outcasts? Are they vulnerable prey? Think about how their physical nature will influence their behavior, will influence their character, their personality, their traits as a group, their environment. So try to think of how they would look for that particular environment, and then also how their environment, their origins, and their appearance would affect how they behave, and make sure that there is some kind of baseline. Obviously, every individual in a species is unique, but we all have similar instincts, a similar sort of baseline of human nature. Tip number 3, symbolism and themes. If you really want your monster or creature to hit home, infuse them with symbolic meaning or thematic relevance. Consider how they might actually represent certain fears, desires, or aspects of human nature. This adds layers of depth to your story and can actually reflect on deeper themes. So if you have, for example, this is a cliche one at this point, but just using it as an example, if you use monsters to reflect on being an outcast, to reflect on not fitting in, or being stereotyped based on appearance, that will hit so much deeper than just there's a monster. Tip number 4, interaction with the world. Think about how your monsters and creatures interact with the world around them. So what's their ecological role? Their place in the food chain? How do they impact the environment? How do they interact with other species? What does the world mean to them? So how do they interact with the world and with nature, with the environment? But also, what does their existence mean for the world, for nature and the environment and the species around them? Tip number 5, cultural impact. So we've talked about how they affect the world around them, the environment, nature, and in a sort of very biological way, other species. but what is their cultural impact? How are these monsters or creatures perceived by your story's cultures and societies? Different groups may treat them differently. Some groups may have superstitions, some may treat them as deities, some might have rituals that relate to these creatures. There may be conflicts, there may be alliances, harmonies, symbiosis, and interesting dynamics between these monsters and creatures and the other cultures, societies, races within your world. And then here's a bonus tip. Subvert expectations. Unfortunately, we've reached a point in the world where most kinds of stories have already been told. That doesn't mean that new stories aren't out there and that stories can't be original. And that's exactly the point. If you want to create something unique in today's market, you have to subvert expectations. Play with readers' expectation of what a monster typically is, or what the specific kind of creature is usually portrayed as. And create creatures or beings that contradict these preconceived notions, or blend different aspects from various mythologies, or use a monster or a creature that is very rarely depicted but has a rich background in lore. So this will add a sense of freshness and intrigue to your story, and it will really leave the readers wanting to learn more about the actual nature of this monster or creature, and will keep them intrigued. So remember that you need to strike a balance between imagination and coherence in the context of your story's world. So that's it. Those are my 6 tips for writing monsters and creatures. I hope that you like this video and that you found these tips useful. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Remember to hit that subscribe button and ring that little bell so you don't miss any videos. I post writing advice videos on Wednesdays and book reviews on some Fridays. As always, you can find me on my website, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, TikTok, and BookBub. All the links are listed below, and then I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!